when I was preparing this talk, I thought it was all students, and I was a bit surprised that there are staff in here, colleagues in here as well. So bear with me because I have this for students. So let me start with a story. A story. This is a real life story of myself. I was sent to have a meeting with Nokia Autoliv in Motala, Sweden, and the whole thing started when the president of this group of company called me to his office and he said, "Can you go to Sweden for a meeting?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." No. The first thing I asked was who was paying for it. They say one of the sister companies is paying for it. And I say, "Yeah, okay. If someone is paying for it, I'm going." So the flight took me to Frankfurt, and there was a 6-hour wait for the next flight. It was not too long, not too short, and so I stay in the airport. And then the next thing I knew, went to my fly to Sweden. I can't remember, Schiphol, I think, and then took a taxi to this place. And by the time I arrived, it was an office and everyone was leaving. But luckily for me, there was some guy who said, "Oh, you are here." So he drove me. I've got no clue who this guy was. He took me to a hotel and he said, "Okay, you stay here, and tomorrow I'll come and pick you at such a time." So the next morning, I got myself ready, and he was there. He picked me up to this factory. And in the factory, we had a meeting, as I was told. But I recall this halfway through, someone said, "Okay, come, I need to show you this." So he brought me to the factory and he said, "This is the machine." Okay, fine. I had a look at the machine and then finished the meeting. And the moment I finished the meeting, they took me in a car, drove me to the airport. I flew back. That's it. So when I came back, the president of the group of company asked me, "Can we do it?" I was like, "Do what?" I had no idea. I thought they just wanted my technical expertise for the meeting in Sweden. So I went. But what actually happened was that the company has been negotiating with Nokia Autoliv to do the manufacturing of the airbag system here in Malaysia. And the Nokia Autoliv people say, "No, you can't do it because one of the equipment is very difficult for us to do." And all that equipment is that there is a very viscous liquid, and the entire electronics board slowly dip into this viscous liquid, and then it comes out. That's all there is. And what this liquid does is that it coats the entire electronics so that it becomes waterproof, right? And so because I did not know what the meeting was, why I was sent to Sweden, thinking that it was only my technical expertise that they were after for me to help them with the meeting. That's all I went. But luckily, I saw enough of what was being shown that I could answer the question whether we could take the machine back or not. Okay, why am I telling you this story? Was this one of the key lessons I learned from this is begin with the end in mind. I have no idea why I was being sent to Sweden. I should have asked the question, but I did not. And had I asked the question, I would have been able to ask sensible question when they were showing me the equipment, right? And I would have been better prepared going to the meeting. And again, why am I asking you this? Is this when, as a student or whatever you're doing, especially as a student coming to the university, are you conscious of the key skill and knowledge that you actually want to gain in your tertiary education? Meaning, you come to uni. Why do you come to uni? You want your degree, but what are the skills that you want to learn? Hence, me asking you guys the question prior to this talk, right? What are the skills? What is the one more skill that you think is important to you that you would like to learn? So what the result shows is that majority of you think that the ability to think critically and creatively solve challenges is the thing that you would want. Domain specific knowledge, There are 5 of you, so there is still quite a number. So others, there are 3 things like all of the above and things like that. So in your case, when you come to the uni, did you actually know that these are the things that you would like to? And what makes you pick those skills as important skill? You see, most of us actually enter into something because we like it or we want it or things like that. But we are never conscious of what is the end in mind. Let me tell you why I'm talking about this. If you look at our career life cycle, it actually goes through these 3 phases: the learning, earning, and the retiring phase. In the early phase, the learning phase, this would be like from your kindergarten all the way to the early stage of your career, right? This is where you exchange, especially in the uni time, right? Or the school time, you exchange time, money for knowledge and skill. Okay. When you enter the workforce, you are still in the learning phase. But at that point in time, you are making money also. So the part where you exchange money for skill and knowledge is not quite there. Someone is paying you for you to have an experience. So that's the early part of your career, the later part of your learning stage. The second part is that when you, with the knowledge and skills that you have, you exchange time and health for money. This is a time where you use whatever skill and knowledge, you are selling your skill and knowledge, and you exchange in terms of your time and sometimes your health, because you may stress yourself to a point where it affects your health, but what you want is money in return. Yeah. Then after that, what would happen is that you actually go to a point where you retire. So when you retire, you then exchange money for health. You already have money, and then what you would like to do then is that you take them, because it could be that you have affected your health in some ways. You were not eating well during the time that you were in the earning stage, and then you now have got some kind of gastric issue or some kind of cholesterol issues, and now you exchange money for health. Yeah. Now, if you know this cycle, the learning phase, that's the phase that most of us are at right now, is an important part, that you have to learn the right thing so that you can actually make money out of it. Okay, let me give you a few examples. You take a normal engineer, or a computer science guy, or even a lawyer, or whatever the case is, right? You can say kindergarten, primary school, yeah, it's just a stepping stone where you have enough basics so that you can ultimately go to the university. And in the university, that's where you learn to become a computer scientist or an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever it is. And then in the early phase of your career, that's still in your learning phase, right? And what happened there is that you get paid, not much, usually fairly sufficient, but you're not making enough money so that you become rich. But what you would do is that you would gain more experience. You would gain more knowledge of the industry and so on and so forth, right? And then you become more senior. As you become more senior, then what happens is that your pay increase. So let's take an academic as an example. You start off as a lecturer, and then you become a senior lecturer, then senior lecturer 2, senior lecturer 1, then you become an associate prof 2, associate prof 1, then you become a professor 2, professor 1, and then you become a deputy vice chancellor or a pro vice chancellor. So you climb. As you climb, you can only climb to the next level when you have enough knowledge and experience to be at that level. And as you climb high enough, your salary becomes high enough that you could now have surplus. So that's the earning part. And once you earn enough, you reach a point where you can retire. If you don't damage your health bad enough, you could just use the money to continue living. You can go and go for your vacation, go and buy things or whatever. That's the part that you enjoy. Okay. Typically that's the case, right? But there are people who change their career path, and let's look at an example. Don Thompson was the ex-CEO of McDonald's. He's actually an electrical engineer, born in 1963. He graduated from Purdue with a BSc in electrical engineering in 1984. That was the year I entered uni. And right after that, he works for Northrop Grumman. So this company is in military aircraft. So Grumman is also the people that makes the capsule that landed in the moon, on the moon. Yeah. And in 1990, he joined McDonald's. You'll be thinking, oh, McDonald's, he's selling food. No, he's still an engineer. He goes there, he designed this robotics equipment and control circuits, right? So he's still an electrical engineer. He's still designing this. He's still an engineer, even though he's at McDonald's. And then in 1992, just 2 years after that, he got himself promoted to become a project manager and a staff director for quality and so on and so forth. Now, the interesting thing is that 2 years after that, he switched to operation. Now, operation is not his training at all. And he has to start all over again. He has to learn how to manage a McDonald's restaurant. So he actually started off by cooking, you know. He went to a restaurant, the McDonald's restaurant, he learned how to cook. So he started off from fry cooking, and then he became a shift manager, and he became an assistant manager, and he became a core manager of a McDonald's outlet because he's in operation. Yeah. Then subsequently, is the slide changing for you guys? Just let me ask.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So in 2012, oops, the slides is the wrong way. Okay, so so earlier, 1994, he was learning. 98, 4 years later, he was promoted to be a regional manager in the San Diego area. This is a part in California. So he oversees now 350 restaurants. Then subsequently, he was promoted to be senior vice president of Midwest division. So now he looked after 2,200 restaurants. And then subsequently, he was promoted to become a president of the West division. This is like the western part of the US, where he looked after 4,000 restaurants. Okay. Few more years later, year 2005, he was made the executive VP and become COO of the entire US. So he looks after all the restaurants in the US. And then a year later, he was made the president of McDonald's US and Canada. Okay. Now, in a year later, he became COO of McDonald's global operation. Okay. Then subsequently, in 2012, he was made the CEO of McDonald's Corporation, the entire McDonald's Corporation. So you see this person started off as an engineer, worked as an engineer, then he switched his line. But when he switched his line, he has to go through the learning phase again, and he slowly climbed his way up the ladder, right? All the way until he became the CEO of that corporation. Okay, and 2 years later, because of the decline in the foot traffic, customer traffic, he decided to step down. But today, he is in the board of many companies like Beyond Meat. He served in the board for the Ronald McDonald's House of Charity, the Purdue University board, and a few others. So if you look at his career, it also goes through the same thing. So he is at the stage right now where he's partly in the earning stage and partly in the retirement stage, right? Okay. Why am I sharing with you all these things is that if we know what we would get ourselves into right now, we would then know what are the skills and knowledge that we have to prepare ourselves for. So if you know the kind of career that you want to get yourself into whilst you are still studying, even if you're working right now, then you would know what are the things that you should pick up right now going forward. Okay. So what are the skills that you could pick up from your education that will benefit you in the earning phase, right? It's the same as even if you're working right now. It's like what are the skills that I need to pick up now so that I can be better off tomorrow or in my next phase. The career advice I have always given my junior has always been that whatever I do today, I do it today so that I become more marketable tomorrow. And whatever I do tomorrow, I do it in such a way that it makes myself, I'll make myself more marketable the day after. So it's constantly about enriching your career so that you can climb up, right? Now, let me share this observation with you. When I was with a startup in Shah Alam, so that company AIC is a conglomerate of company. It's like a investment company. So this company, what they do is that they're actually three people, and what they do is that they invest in company, right? Now, so many people actually with certain skills and knowledge will actually come to them and say, we'll start a company together. Let me give you an example. Yeah, how I got involved was that this group of company actually wanted to start an IC design operation. They want to start it together. In actual fact, they did. They start the company, the IC design company, together with Hazana, because it was meant to be the IC design house for the country. And how I got involved was that I was with Intel Design Center, Intel Penang Design Center. So I have knowledge and skills in terms of IC design. So were some of the other ex-colleagues from Intel Penang Design Center. So a few of us were taken out from Intel to start this operation. You see, the knowledge and skills that we have make us very valuable, and then they actually took us out and gave us money to start the company. You understand where I'm coming from? And that's not the only thing that I experienced. I've seen one guy, he was working for another company. He became so well versed in terms of producing silicon wafer. And so then I was in the meeting where they had a discussion, and he said, you want to start a factory that can do this? I can do it. Just like me, I've designed ICs for mobile phone handset before. And the previous dean of the school, Mushtaq, at one point in time was talking about it. I say, you want one of this operation? I can start you one, because I've done it before. So it's the same with your career. Whatever you do, you have to gather enough experience and skills so that you are more marketable the day after. The same thing is true with your university studies. Whatever you're doing right now, whatever you're studying, know the kind of skills and knowledge that you need to have so that you will become marketable when you go out looking for a job next time. Yeah. So let me then go through a little bit more about career and employment. If you look at the anatomy of an employment, you see, a business, right, is where you organize your employees in a manner in such a way that all these people put together, and whatever things that they are doing, they produce goods and services that it can be sold. It can be sold for profit. So I could put a few guys in the factory, and I organize them in such a way that, okay, you receive goods, and I just organize them in such a way that on a daily basis, something comes out from the factory that I can sell. And I may even organize it in such a way that I have people selling it for me. I have people taking order. I've got people shipping out. I got transported it. So I organize all these people in such a way that as long as they do the thing I ask them to do, they'll produce goods and services that I can sell for profit. That's business. And how employment come about is that for a business, I need to organize people like that. So I give them, I've got jobs, I got vacancy for them, so I employ them, right? So employees are then paid for the work that they do, correct? And the implication of all this is as follows. Employment is only so as to make profit. So the business is there because they want to make profit. And because they want to make profit, they have no choice but to employ people to go and do it, correct? And as a result, only then you have got employment. Now, the cost of the employee cannot exceed the profit. Otherwise, the company would not survive, which means that the cost of the employee cannot. So let me put it in the other way, like what I'm showing us on the slides right now. It is like the contribution of the employee must be more, which means yeah, together the employee produce something that I can sell for more than I pay my employee. So the contribution from the employee has to be more. So if I take the example of Intel, for instance, when I was working there for the very first time in 1994, they tell us each one of us contribute how much to the company. And in our case, they clearly tell us, I can remember it was 2-something million. Each one of us contribute 2-something million to the company. And the way they calculate it is that this group of people that works on a certain chip, how much money the chip is making and they divide it by the number of staff. So each one of us are contributing that much. I mean, they're not going to pay me 2 million. They'll pay me a lot less than that. 2 million is in US. Let's just say 2 million is in US dollar. My salary at that point in time was something like 3,000. In a whole year, it's like, 3,000, let's say 360,000, right? You convert it back to US dollar. Let's just say that it's 100,000 compared to a million. So my contribution is a lot more than what the company is making, correct? So there is a reason why I'm saying that. So the thing is this: how much are you worth? This is a very, very important question. Now, amongst all the team that is coming together, we are not all paid the same. This is not a communist system, right? We're not all paid the same. Each one of us play a certain role. But what is your worth? You have to know that. So here, let me tell you two real stories. Some of you would have heard the story. So, but if you have not, let me just share the story with you. Richard is a Malaysian. We were working together in Melbourne. When I was working for NEC Australia, Richard introduced himself as, yes, he speaks like a Malaysian. He said he's a Malaysian and la-di-da-di-da. And then at the very early stage, he was telling me that his soldering tip is blunt. And the device that he has to solder is very fine pitch. He cannot solder it anymore. And so I say, go and ask the boss for a new tip. I mean, the soldering tip is like 30-something Aussie dollar at that point in time. I still remember this very vividly. Even if the boss doesn't want to buy it, he also can buy it for himself, right? No big deal. But why should an employee buy this thing, right? So he should go to the boss and get a replacement. You know what Richard told me? Richard told me this. He asked me to justify. In my mind, it's like, of course you have to justify why you need a soldering tip. But in Richard's mind, it's like, you should know that I need a soldering tip. You should just give it to me. Every year I keep hearing him complaining about the soldering tip. And something like 3 years later, when I was about to leave NEC Australia, he got his soldering tip. I've got no idea how he got it, but he got his soldering tip. Let me contrast that with Martin. Martin was the manager of the failure analysis lab in Intel Penang. We are good friends, and he's now living and working in Melbourne. He's an RMIT graduate, so he went back to Australia. The very first time I left Intel, after I got my HR clearance and all those things, I was walking down the corridor and bumped into Martin. Then Martin called me and said, "Come, I want to show you something." You see, Martin at that point in time was thinking that he can convince me to stay at Intel and to join his unit instead. So he has got a failure analysis lab, and it's quite a famous failure analysis lab. And when we sat down, he took out his folder. He showed me. He said, "This project is about this VR delamination, and then how we fix it and how much it saved the company." Then he showed me another one. He showed me all kind of projects and what they did and what they solved and how much it saved the company. And what I learned from him that day was this. So he collect all this data so that he can go back to the boss when it comes to review. He says, "Boss, this year we actually work on how many projects? It could be 5, it could be 10, whatever the case is, right? Project number 1 saved the company how many million? And the amount of money that he saved the company is usually like tens of million or hundreds of million, right? So then he will total it up and he said, okay, in total, for all the projects that me and my team worked on, we have saved the company how much? And this would be like a few hundred million US, right? Then he asked for a certain percentage of that savings. Let's just say that year he has saved the company, let's just say simplicity, 100 million. Then he says, can I have 10 million? Just 10%. He's not asking for the 10 million for himself. He's asking that 10 million so that he can buy equipment for his lab. Okay? So when he got 10 million, he go and buy equipment. So every year he got so much money that he buys equipment. And by doing so, he end up with a failure analysis lab that is so well equipped that it is the best failure analysis lab outside North America. Now, why am I telling you this story? Is this? You may be learning circuit theory, you may be learning EM field theory or statics dynamics or whatever the case is, right? And I can tell you that business value is just as important as circuit theory. It's just as important as your statics, dynamics, I don't know, mass and energy balance and all those kind of things. Why? Because the moment you go out to work, what are you worth? Do you know? And you must make sure that you are contributing more, because remember the anatomy of an employment. You must contribute more than what you are being paid. Correct or not? And if you don't understand all this kind of business value stuff, you could be cheated, or you may not understand how to make yourself valuable. I'll give you another example. This is a real case. I was running a workshop with Royal Selangor, and in this workshop, the designer was very depressed. You can see that he's very depressed. The thing he talked about, he is very, very depressed. So I then asked him, I said, what do you do? He said, I'm a designer. And I said, tell me some of the project that you have worked on. So he named a few. So then I turned to the sales guy and I said, how much sales do you think this product has generated? I mean, this guy, his design is being sold by the company, and his design generate like millions for us, like, and he doesn't know it. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't know, like Martin, how to negotiate for a better work condition for himself. He doesn't know that he could actually use business value as a means to justify for probably a pay rise for himself. He doesn't know that. Hence, not only are the technical knowledge important, the concept of business value and the anatomy of an employment is also very important to all of us. Yeah, and I think it's something that all of us need to know. So I'll repeat it one more time. Our pay, our remuneration is proportional to our contribution. The more you contribute, the more they can pay you, right? So then the question now is, how do you increase your contribution? You see, what senior, so as a person become more senior, right? The senior have something that the junior doesn't have. That's the reason why the senior gets paid more. And then the question is, what is it that allows the senior to be paid more? It is a question that you need to ask yourself. So let me give you a few more stories. I think story would make it very easy for all this message to get across. Let me tell you a story of a CFO. This CFO is a lady. I know this person very well. I know the family very well. And I frequently heard the daughter asking this CFO, the mother, and say, hey, mom, what do you do as a CFO? And you can see her, I always see her struggling to explain what is it that she does. So she says she handles the money of the company. And the joke is that counting money, you can only do plus and minus. So then the daughter always say, what should I learn how to do divide and multiply and and all those things. Anyway, the CFO story was this. At one point in time, this company had tax issue. There's some tax difficulties. They have a manufacturing plant in Malaysia, but they are an European company. So and they are in some ways, because they are a European company, the headquarters is like in Europe, and Europe tend to make decisions to do things in a certain way that sometimes violate certain regulation here. And by the time they found out, they owe the tax office a few $100 million in terms of tax they have to pay, just because of how they deal with how they report their tax. They are not evading tax. It's just that how they've classified certain things has landed them in that situation. So in a lot of cases, everyone has kind of like given up hope, and it's like, okay, they're preparing to pay for that few $100 million. That's a lot of money. And it being a listed company would have got a shock into the revenue for the year, or the profit for the year, and it could affect their stock price. So what this CFO did was that she analyzed the actual situation, talked to the tax consultant, And through the tax consultant, they had a discussion with the tax tax office, and she found a way. She found a way in such a way they say, okay, clearly we are wrong here. We will pay for it, and we have to pay that. But she works the story in such a way that many things was considered as okay. So they end up paying only a few million instead of a few hundred million. They end up paying a few hundred, not paying a few hundred million. They only end up paying a few million of tax that was previously wrongly calculated, right? Now, why am I telling you the CFO story is that she has the ability to look at a certain situation and she has the ability to solve it for the company. So just like Martin, because she solved something for the company, instead of a few hundred million, they are only paying a few million. She has saved the company a few hundred million anyway. So whatever, even if she were to say, even if she was to ask for $1 million pay that year, or $1 million bonus that year, if I'm the CEO, I will give it to her, because I'm still ahead anyway, because it saved me a lot more. You understand where I'm coming from? Hence, knowing what you do and how you contribute to the company is actually very important. Knowing how much you are worth is actually very, very important. Okay, so if you think about it, the ability to think critically, the ability to have analytical thinking, the ability to think creatively are all very, very important skills, right? In essence, I'm telling you the ability to solve challenges ahead of you, solve challenges for your organization, be it at your employer or your own organization, is actually something very, very important. Okay. Now, whatever challenges that is given to you, you would notice that the answer is it depends. So if someone were to ask me something, right, I would normally not just give a straightforward answer, because if I'm giving a straightforward answer, I'm making an assumption. I would normally be making an assumption, right? My assumption could be right or my assumption could be wrong. So normally when someone asks me a question, I always say it depends. It depends on many things, right? So let me give you a few examples of the answer says it depends. You know, our campus has got parking issues. Not now, because nobody goes to the campus anymore, but when we first started in 2010, we have got so much difficulties parking that people are parking all over the place. And back then, the current entrance doesn't exist. We were using the entrance that comes from the residential area, and people are parking all around the residential area until we got ourselves into a lot of trouble with the residential association. So there was always a need to find a solution for our parking issue. And one team actually decided for their engineering design and innovation project to work on this, to work on the campus parking challenge. And this is what they did. They went to the admin office and said, okay, how many parking spaces do we have? So the admin office actually gave them, the facilities people actually gave them the map of the place and showed them this is parking block A, block B, block C, and so on and so forth, and how many parking space in each of those, including those free parking area and where they're not marked, it's just an open space. They estimated how many. So what this student actually also did was that they actually went and estimate count roughly, is the number correct or not? And what they from doing that, they know, okay, the capacity for the campus parking is some number. Okay, and they didn't did a survey. They asked, I think if I remember correctly, 300 respondents. These are students as well as staff. They asked the question, how do you come to work, come to campus? So some say I take public transport, some say I drive, some say I carpool, and what have you. So then they have, from the 300 samples, they have an idea how many % of people actually drive to campus and how many take public transport. Because from the 300 data, they extrapolate it to the full population of the campus. And then what time do you come? What time do you leave was also the question. So then they simulate and they show that the parking space usage would grow, right? Because of the time that people are coming in. So then you see like a curve, like a bell-shaped curve. And then the bell-shaped curve is done in such a way that at some point in time, it would exceed the capacity of the parking space in the campus. And that time, they also notice is the time, roughly the time that people start queuing at the entrance of the parking space, which means that they triangulate and they realize that the data they have is fairly accurate. So around about 10-ish, 11, people start queuing up. And the queue would go on all day long until around about 4 o'clock. So based on the data they've collected, then they say, okay, it's valid. Now, look, they have to find a solution for this. The question they ask is this. The question that they're asking is that, are we here to increase capacity for parking in the campus, or are we here to decrease the demand for parking space in the campus? I'll repeat that again, yeah? Meaning, they are trying to solve a parking challenge, right? The parking difficulties that we have. But then they ask the question, is this challenge about increasing the number of parking capacity, number of parking space, or is it to decrease the parking demand? So either way, to increase, so if you think of a bell-shaped curve and a horizontal line that cuts across the bell-shaped curve, right? Increased parking capacity means that the horizontal line, you actually want to increase it, move it higher up so that you have enough space that even at the peak, you have enough space, right? Or you want to reduce the demand, which means that the capacity remains the same, but the bell-shaped curve, you actually move it lower. So when you think about to increase parking capacity, you have to start thinking about how can you increase parking capacity. If you think about reducing parking demand, it's all about how can I come up with ways in such a way that people have got less demand for parking in the. So then it answers it addresses what I was saying just now. It depends on how you're looking at it. Correct or not? So the answer always lies in it depends. It depends on how you're looking at it. Let me give you another example. I've forgotten the name of this company. They are a wood polish company, which means if you've got a wood table that is polished, there is this chemical that you can wipe and then you'll give it a very nice shine. And they at one point in time, they came up with a very much improved formulation. And then instead of putting it in a bottle where you actually squirt it on the surface and then use a cloth to wipe it, they came up with like wet ones, like wet tissue. And you open up the pack, there is one of these tissue is already impregnated with all the polish chemical. You just wipe it. But the interesting thing is that this new product with the improved formulation, after you wipe it, it's shining like anything. But after that, you see streaks, you see gray, dull lines, right? So they keep trying to improve the formulation so that you don't get this smudge, you don't get these streaks of lines, right? Then one day someone say, look, it's nothing wrong with the formulation. This is not a chemical related challenge. This challenge is an optical challenge. So then what they do is that they actually look at the chemical formulation for the polish from the optical point of view. Now, what happened is that when they fix the solution, when they wipe it with the new formula, the streaks are still there. But in terms of the optical density of the chemical and all those things, you don't see it, right? So again, it comes down to the point. The solution is always it depends. And why I'm telling you this is that there's a saying, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So if you look at the challenge, and depending on how you look at it, the answer comes in a different way. So the ability to do this is actually very, very important. Yeah. I know I'm kind of like running out of time. So this is an important part, and I wish I have got more time that I can talk to you about thinking techniques like trees or design thinking or things like that. But just remember this: whatever technique that you apply, you look at it from a different way. So one of the things that I always look at is that I always look at it. Whatever I'm trying to look at, right? I will look at it from before, current, and I predict the future. Or I look at it from a certain angle. I always tip my head to the left 90 degrees, to the right 90 degrees, upside down. And I just want to see it from a different angle, and then from the different angle, the solution may come at you. And I would consciously ask myself, what is this issue anyway? And can I see it from a different angle? Okay. Now I just want to close. I want to answer a few things, and then I'll answer your question. You see, there is no one thing that is important. Actually, a bundle of soft and hard skill are actually very important. So the graduate capabilities that we have at TELUS are a list of things that is actually critically important for us as a graduate. That's the reason why it's called a graduate capabilities, right? But those are not enough. And I would like to tell you also that when you go out to work, you must be able to justify a position. Meaning, you must be able to contribute. You must be able to sit in that position and contribute more than what you're being paid for, right? And also, in the same line of thinking, you must be able to justify all the proposal that you put forward. Now, business value, the concept of business value, if you understand it, what actually happens is that when you propose something, you understand what impact it has from a business or an employment anatomy point of view, whether it makes sense or not. And if you do not know it, you could be proposing something that is actually quite meaningless. And in a university, I don't care what program you're studying, but the fundamental thing going through a university is that you actually learn how to learn how to think, and you learn how to solve challenges. I realized this when I was in uni, after I did my internship, that a university is not about me learning about computer science. It's not about me learning algorithm. It's not about me learning circuit theory or mass energy balance. It's actually about me training my mind, me training, going through the process of training myself in terms of learning how to learn, learning how to think, and learning how to solve challenges. You see, there's no module that actually come and teach you how to learn, how to think, how to solve challenges, right? It's always, they are giving you things in such, giving you activities, either a tutorial or an assignment, in such way that you go through the exercise of learning all these things, right? So the last thing I want to mention is that the solution to the challenge that you're looking for is always, it depends. And you have to remember that you change the way you look at things, and the things that you look at change. This statement doesn't only apply to employment or the things that we're trying to solve as a work. I give you one example, and that's the reason why under the previous dean, we don't use the P words, okay? And if you don't know what P words is, we can talk about it later on. So, so under Mushtaq in the past, we don't use the word PROBLEM, and every time we say that word, he doesn't even want to spell it right today. We pay 1 ringgit to the opportunity fund. So, and he believed that he believed that if exactly this statement, you have to change the way you look at things. So every time we actually go to the corporate and give training, he always talk about this, but he doesn't use this statement. He used something else. So there's an example that he gave about his son. His son studied in this school where his son is having difficulties with one of the teacher, and the teacher complained about the son all the time. So Mushtaq went to see the teacher. So the teacher said, your son is a nuisance. He's very disruptive. Blah 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 blah. And Mushtaq was like, you are a teacher, you know, you should know how to handle all these things and things like that. But he could not convince the teacher. So instead, he talked to his son. So he told his son. He says, okay, what's the issue with the teacher? And then he said, oh, this and that. You see, his son is quite smart. So his son would answer question and would challenge the teacher, and then so the teacher can't handle it. So he become disruptive, and then the whole thing go haywire. So then Mushtaq told his son, he said, tell me something good about your teacher. Meaning, he's trying to train his son to see his teacher from a different angle, not as someone who punish him all the time. But he wants his son to start looking at the teacher from a point of view that he's actually very, very good at this. He's actually very clever at doing this. He's actually whatever. So all the nice, good things, right? So shortly after he introduced this concept to his son, what actually happened was that the son actually came to him and say, Dad, can I have some money? He said, what do you want money for? He says, I want to buy kain sarong. He said, kain sarong for who? He said, for Mr. So-and-so, his teacher, the teacher that had a lot of issue with him. You see, the moment you start seeing the moment he starts seeing his teacher as someone nice, his own behavior change. And when his behavior changed, the teacher's behavior changed towards him. And the whole solution changed just by one person seeing one thing or one person in a different way. So it's not all about solving challenges. It could also be the challenges that you have in life. You just have to see it from a different angle, see it differently, and it changed. And when it changed, everything else would change. I'm just gonna stop here, and this is the last slide. Let me look at the question that you have. So one of the questions that someone has is that, is thinking process innate or it can be learned? It's both. I mean, I've been dealing with this creativity and innovation things for many years now. And what I've realized, and I've been teaching this topic to people in corporate as well as in the factories for many years now. And there are people who are inherently able to think very well. For whatever reason, they have this ability to think in a creative manner, to think in a, they just have this ability. So it's innate. However, I also believe that it can be learned. Now, thinking techniques, teaching someone thinking techniques is just like teaching someone how to do a judo throw. Some people are actually very good at very natural, and you show him once or twice and he can do the judo throw very easily. Some you have to show a lot more times. But at the end of the day, like it or not, all of us will be able to do a judo throw, and some much better than the others. And so to me, it is both. And if I have answered the question, you could just change the right column, C column, to a yes. If not, I'll come and answer it some more, or you can put more question. So the second question is how to be consistently think outside the box. Let me tell you the reason why I gave the title, thinking inside a bigger box. You know, the concept of thinking outside the box is like it's out of the ordinary, correct or not? And there is a Malaysian inventor, and he said thinking without a box. I mean, he's playing with words, but what he's saying is that thinking without limits. Some people can, some people can't. And a friend of mine coined this saying, thinking inside a bigger box. Now, why we have got this saying, thinking inside a bigger box, is this. The guy that says thinking without a box, he can, because he's naturally born like that. He has the ability to think with no limits. That's the reason why he's an inventor. He's a serial inventor, and he has been coming out with one invention after another. But many of us are not. And if you think about how we think, we cannot think about things that is not inside our head. Now, the theory I have is this, and I believe it is true. It is impossible for you to come up with an idea that you have not seen before. Whatever idea you come out, even if it is new, is a combination of ideas that that you know. It's quite hard. In actual fact, I have never come across it myself, that I come up with an idea that was not a combination or a permutation of things I know. So I always believe that you can only think inside a box. So hence, my friend is saying, you just have to think inside a bigger box. So one of the ways that I train myself to have a bigger box is that I put more knowledge inside. Meaning, I'm always looking for creative idea. I'm always looking for new products. I'm always looking for new way of doing things. And the more of these little ideas that I see, then I have got enough little parts that can allow me to create new innovative and creative ideas. So my solution becomes more creative based on what I already know. And hence, that is about thinking inside a bigger box, because there is no thinking outside the box. There's nothing outside the box, and then there is no way for you to come up with new ideas with nothing. Okay, so to answer question number 2, how to consistently think outside the box. Let's just say what you mean is, how do you consistently think creatively? And the answer to me is learn thinking techniques. And you can learn techniques like trees, the Russian invention techniques. And you can learn techniques like design thinking. You can learn techniques like brainstorming, brainwriting, right? So all the thinking techniques that you have, and to know when to use which technique, then by doing so, you can become consistent with it. Now, thinking skills or thinking techniques is like any other skill that you pick up. You need practice. And when I was in Intel, we have a regular session where we just come together and we just practice the technique. And by doing so, it can become a habit to the extent that the moment I'm facing a challenge, I start pulling out the technique. It's just like someone going to learn karate or taekwondo, right? So they have a constant sparring every time they have. So it becomes part of your muscle memory that you react like that. So if you constantly practice in terms of your thinking techniques, it becomes a natural reflex action that the moment someone throws something at you, you will have that natural tendency to solve it in a similar manner. Okay, I'm not sure if I have answered your question. If I have, if you've got more question, please key it in. And if I've answered your question, you just set yes on the C column. Anyone else have got any kind of question?
So we presume that it is no questions from the audience.
We've got 2 minutes left.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Edwin. I think we can see traces of Sadhguru in some of your slides and also your wordings, and traces of Mushtaq. I think we remember him for putting up a good platform for the school also, including, I still remember the success training, right? Where
Yes.
it's all, the motive is all towards the storytelling.
Yes.
And we love to hear a lot of stories from you, and of course from Mushtaq also. The P word, actually, it also makes a difference in our families, also in our personal life, also, and also in the professional life. But I think the key component of okay, so I think I have some question. Can you say method to create a proper team for a project? Would you want to answer this?
Can you say method to create proper team for? Can you elaborate more, Johnny? What do you mean? How do you form a team? Is that what you mean?
I guess correct.
Okay. Good question. This is what I normally do. When you put a team together, you cannot have everyone a thinker, and if everyone is a thinker, then everyone just keep thinking. Nobody do anything, right? So you need to have a mixture of thinker and doer. Now, if you look at the thinker, there are people who think in a divergent manner, which means that they're thinking as they go forward, they are constantly diverging and coming out of new ideas. There are thinking convergent people, which means that whatever they're thinking, they're constantly thinking in a manner that converges to a final solution. The same is true of a doing person. The people who do, there are people who does things in such a way that they create new other way of doing things. Whilst the doing converging people, they are constantly doing things in such a way that they converge to a final solution. So project managers are people who are convergent, whether they're thinking or they're doing. Whatever they do, they just want to finish off something. So they are the converging people, right? Project managers tend to be doing converging people. Creative people, that like a lot of the designers, they tend to be the thinking divergent people. So your team needs to have people from the 4 categories: thinking, diverging, thinking converging, doing converging, doing diverging. In the early part of the project, you want to have as many ideas thrown into the options as possible. So the diverging people are allowed to have more say. And then when once you are more or less settled on what the project should look like, you get rid of your diverging people, and you have more of the converging people working on the project to get it finished. So I give you one story. Hasbro, I think it's Hasbro and Intel used to have a company together, and they put they got people who are from the toys industry, and they got people from the electronics industry, which is Intel. And what they do in the early phase is that the project manager tag along, but the designer have the bigger say. So the designers are the one that is diverging. They're constantly coming up with all kinds of different ideas. But it reached a certain point where the project has to finish. And the rules is that the diverging people have to hand over the project to the converging people. So the project manager actually take over. And the diverging people, their say is no longer regarded as too much, right? So then they don't have much of a voice to allow the project to finish. So to answer your question, Johnny, is that you actually need these four groups of people, but you must be able to control it in such a way that the diverging people have more say in the early part of the project, and then the converging people have got more say at the later part of the project. Otherwise, your project won't finish. You also need to understand the 4 stages of team formation: forming, storming, norming, performing. And by understanding this anatomy of the team development, then you can guide the project to go through to a point that they are performing. I hope that answers your question. Brilliant. There is there was an ex-director of Procter & Gamble. So for those of you who doesn't know, the question is being asked on the chat group, chat window. This director of Procter & Gamble, him and his team has many products. You know, Procter & Gamble comes up with all kinds of products. They are like a 3M company. And him and his team has studied the Myers-Briggs profile. And from the profile, they can actually determine whether you are a thinking person or a doing person. And if you are doing or thinking person, whether you are diverging or you are converging. So the way he has done it, and I have gone through the profile before, he asks you a list of questions, and the way you answer it. So based on your answer, it goes through an engine, and the engine actually produce and say, you are thinking person or doing person, and whether on which side of the diverging or converging scale that you are. Yes, Myers-Briggs. Yeah, the MBTI.
Any other questions from the audience? If no questions, thank you, Dr. Edwin, for once again a fantastic session. So actually stressing the brain muscles to a greater extent. And I think the takeaway from your session is on the employment anatomy. And as you mentioned, like it is not alone inclined to students, even for working adults or those who are employed also, your talk make real sense to us. And what we have a core for the whole session is it depends. Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Edwin, once again. Thank you for all of those who joined today for the session. Tomorrow we have a session with Dieter Lim. So he will be talking about electric vehicle market pulse in Malaysia. Thank you very much, Dr. Edwin, and thank you very much for all the audience there. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.